What's going on, everybody? This is D Got Sense here, and I'm back with another episode of the D Got Sense Show. And the topic of today is hard guide and brain prioritize. And, um, you know, first off, I just want to thank all viewers that are listening, for choosing to tune in and get some free game and elevate your mental state. And quite frankly, to choose to be one of the one of the few that are actually trying to make a difference in their own life. So shout out to y'all. Um, so today's topic is the hard guide and brain prioritize. And so what this means is wherever your emotion, right, your feelings or your passion is what your brain will focus on, right? And so there's a few things I want to touch on, but first I'll start on a spiritual sense, right? In the Bible, the Messiah, Yahya Hamashiach, you know, one thing he says is um, basically, in the first off, I guess I should say this. In the Old Testament, it talks about knowing a man's heart, right? Because what stems from the heart is a person's true intentions, their true agenda, their true motives, right? The only way someone can even betray you is if um, they had something scheming from the very beginning, right? It's very rare that someone's just completely jumped ship. In the New Testament, the Messiah talked about if you look upon a maiden, to lust after her, you've committed adultery in your heart. Now, granted, let me say this first: adultery is another man's wife, right? You sleeping with another man's wife. If a woman is not married, you cannot commit adultery with her. That would be if you're a married man and you do that, that would be considered fornication. Um, so, but back to the topic. The reason he goes on to say this is because here's the thing: once you've decided in your mind that you're willing to do it, the only thing that is stopping you is the opportunity that has yet to present itself. And a lot of people fail to realize that a person's intentions, a person's heart will always guide their actions, right? Because remember, the heart guides and the brain prioritizes. That's why whenever you're having a bad day, right, your feelings about how everything is going, your brain starts to focus on the negative things that are happening in life. Like your brain has two channels, channel N and channel P, channel negative, channel positive. So the moment you start feeling any form of a negative emotion or something that is on the bad side of the emotional spectrum, like sadness, now and grief. Not saying necessarily that it's always bad to be sad, right? Because certain events can cause you to, you know, there that are likely to cause you to be more sad than others, right? But one thing you'll notice is the more that you allow yourself to be given over to certain emotions, the more your brain starts to pick up on different things in that usually tend to fall in that within that spectrum. Like for example, if you feel anger towards someone, your brain starts to kind of find more things to be angry about. Is pretty much what I'm saying. Like if you're sad, if your heart is sad, your brain pretty much starts to find what more ways to be sad. And like you can be your own motivator and your own destroyer, because once you that's what's so dangerous about being negative towards yourself, because your brain is very good at tearing you down, and it's also very good at building you up. It's all about how you feel about yourself. That's why mastering your emotions is such a good thing, or at least knowing, because here's the thing about being a human, right? We all experience emotions, right? But you aren't your emotions, and pretty much all that means is um, if you were sad, you would experience sadness 100% of your life, right? For example, the fact that you experience different emotions let you in the fact that they come and go proves that they are not you, right? But they're a part of you and you experience them. So you just have to learn how to manage it whenever it comes to the surface. And the better you get at managing it, the more control you have over your life, and the more in sync you are with your conscious and your subconscious mind. And so the reason you also need to pay attention to people's heart is because that's how people even get backstabbed in the first place. That's how people get lied to. That's how people, because envy, greed, what else? Covetousness, all of those stem from a person's feelings towards you, right? Their intentions towards you. Because, like I said earlier, the intention will lead to the action, right? You've never hurt someone that you truly didn't want to see them ever lose, right? And people say, for example, people say arguments are normal. Everyone gets into it with each other every once in a while. No, you don't. No, you don't. What tends to happen is in someone's heart, there's usually a disdain, a jealousy. There is usually something that is causing someone to make slick comments towards you, right? There's something causing them to display certain attributes, if that makes sense, right? We all can recount or account of a time when someone said something very, very subtle, but it almost stopped you in your tracks. Like, wait, hold on, what did they just say? Right? And you have to understand that everything um, is always directly under the surface, just waiting to come out. And most people are only good at hiding it for so long, right? That's another reason, and a lot of people think people don't want to be around them um, because they're busy. Some people just can't be around you because they hate you and envy you that much, and they know that if they're around you too long, they can only hide what's under the surface for so long. And there's always a flag that gives it away. It's kind of like if you're on a volcanic island and you start seeing steam come out of the ground, not air pockets. I'm not sure exactly how volcanoes work, but say for instance you see the steam coming out and you see little like specks of heat. You feel little specks of lava um near you, right? Like you kind of go, what was that? And you look down and you're like, huh, oh, that's weird. And one thing that's important to remember is that people can only hide things so well, right? Because one thing that never lies is their body language, right? And this is another thing. You can't deceive those that are very aware of body language and that are very aware of how the mind works and how the brain works. Because you can't have all of those in sync, or all of those won't be in sync if one of them is off. And it's very simple, right? It's very simple to understand. If all of them are in sync, right? So if you hate someone, right, and then your brain's prioritizing that you hate them, and then you have and you don't understand body language, you physically cannot hide the fact that you have a disdain for that person. If someone is very good at hiding their body language, right, they they'll subtly um take shots at you, right? It'll seep out, but it won't be as much as if someone didn't know how to control their body language and their word selection, right? They'll just be very good at masking it. But eventually it'll seep out because it always does, right? You might tell them some good news and their body language will tense up for just a brief second. It'll be fast. You'll have to have a trained eye. But their body will tense up. There'll be a slight pause. There'll be a questioning of, are you sure? Like almost as if they don't want you to elevate, and it all stems from their heart, right? Because if you have a disdain for something, you don't want to see it grow. You know what I mean? If you have a disdain for a group of people, you don't want to see them prosper. So whenever someone is constantly um, showing you that they don't want you to prosper, you have to start asking yourself, what does their heart feel towards me, right? Or if their brain is or the advice that they gives you, even though it may appear logical, ask yourself, is it emotionally based? Is the foundation in it basically rooted in care, love, and compassion? And a lot of people struggle with seeing past people's hearts, right? Because they're too focused on themselves, right? In order to even notice half of this stuff, you have to step outside of yourself. It's kind of like most people don't listen with intention. And when they get around everyone, that's why some people, when you get around them, all they can do is pretty much talk about what they're doing, what's going on with them. And if most people could just learn to listen more than they speak, they would have noticed that this person has side-eyed them 3 times, kind of rolled their eyes. You know what I mean? You would pick up on the subtle hints that the heart hates you, right? And to look into someone's heart is to get a glimpse into the future as to what they might do to you or what they might say to you. Because if you've truly ever wanted to see someone, you know, do better, at no point did your brain ever think of a way to drag them down. It's just not even, it never crossed your mind, right? It never crossed your mind. Like if you're in, if you said in your heart that there is no Elohim, your brain is gonna find every single reason to deny the existence of the creator, right? If your brain has already convinced, or not your brain, if your heart has convinced you that you're not worthy of um, self-love, your brain will never look for a solution. Excuse me. Not necessarily even a solution, but your brain will never look at the facts, the reasons to prove to yourself that you actually are worth caring about. It just won't happen because the heart leads to the action. It's like if you started to focus, your heart is going to focus on, not your heart, your brain is going to focus on what you feel, right? And this is kind of where life is, where it gets kind of complex because your brain and your heart, they work in tandem, but it's like they're shifting responsibility. First, you get an emotion, and then your brain, your heart, senses to your brain, hey, what do we think about this? And it's like, well, what do we feel about it? Well, and now they're having a conversation with each other. That's why it's very hard to change what you tolerate, right? Because you're it's basically as if that emotion hasn't become so immense to the point where your brain literally has to do something. And what is so dangerous is your heart is just as powerful as your brain. The thing is which one will you give yourself over to? And I know that that might sound kind of confusing. And if you think about it, scientifically speaking, like you start breaking down the anatomy of the brain and understand human biology, it is kind of complex, right? That's why they still don't truly understand the human brain because our brain and our heart is quite literally working in tandem with itself or with each other, I should say. So I'm not gonna get into the into the science of it, but one thing you should know is that they're one is guiding and one is prioritizing, but they're both equally as important. So if you don't take anything, from this show, take this. The next time you feel something, take a step back and ask your brain, hey, which of these should we prioritize? And next thing you know, your brain will communicate back to your heart, okay, change your like say you have a level, we'll use a scale of 10. Say you have a 10 anger, 10 sadness, 10 compassion, 10 envy, 10 whatever, right? Whatever the all the emotions on the spectrum. Say something happens and you initially feel some way, right? So the heart is acting first. It's gonna send things to your brain, and now your brain is like, okay, now this is if you don't give over fully to your heart and just give completely over, right? So say your heart is communicating with your brain. Now your brain is going to say, all right, lower. And now remember, this is if you're not all the way at a 10, because once you're at a 10, you're pretty much at a crash out stage. So the lower you are, right, the more you're able to learn to breathe and not just jump to conclusions, right? the more your brain is able to talk to your heart. That's why some people it's almost as if they're mindless, right? We call them crash outs in this society. Crash outs, their brain never communicates with their heart, and their heart never communicates with their brain. They're just an instant 10, and that could be to chemical imbalances, social influences. There's a bunch of reasons. You would have to break down person by person to figure out exactly why all of their numbers are different than, let's say, the next person. But the brain is gonna, like, say you're able to manage your emotions, like you just learned to at least calm down for a few seconds. Your brain is gonna say, all right, lower the anger down to a 4, raise up the compassion to a 6, and it's gonna do that based on whatever the situation is at hand. You see what I'm saying? So when it comes down to it, you always have to pay attention to the way someone feels and thinks, because they're both working in tandem with each other. I have seen several people. Um, they'll mention how they feel, right? But they'll also they'll it's like their heart is communicating with their brain, but like there's no action coming about it, because doing nothing is also an action. It's kind of like silence is also an answer. For example, like say a kid, you told a kid don't do something and they do it, and you catch them red-handed, and you be like, did you do this? Huh? Why'd you do it? And they just sit there looking. That's a whole answer. Being speechless is an answer. So when someone feels something and they're openly expressing that feeling, but you're not watching the second part of the process happen, which is the brain starting to prioritize a proper solution, understand that something is very wrong, right? And it's not hard to identify it. You just have to be willing and open to accepting the fact that something is wrong and that you need to take a step back before you end up getting betrayed by this person, because they have an underlying emotion that you're not able to sense yet. So, whatever you fixate your heart on, the brain is going to find you a solution, whether it's learning to do something, or learning to, not necessarily not learning, not learning. I don't know why I keep saying learning. Adjusting to a new environment. It could be several different things, but the whole point is understanding why you feel the way you do. That's why in therapy, the first thing they'll ask people is, why do you feel this way? Because at some point, the reason a therapist even asks you that is they're trying to get you to understand your heart has to communicate with your brain, and because your subconscious is going to store all of your memories, right? That whenever they start trying to ask you all these questions, they're basically trying to get uh, everything firing on the same cylinders to get to get the memory bank flowing and going, okay, there was a problem that happened here, we stored it in the memory bank and we forgot about it, but when we saw it, and our subconscious got triggered, and it caused an emotion to flood back in because of the initial reaction we had the very first time. That's why even therapists will tell you to, to reflect on what is already past, because there is a reason you feel that way, and the only way to understand the heart is to now I should say this. Some stuff is genetic, some stuff's taught, some stuff spiritual. So there's plenty of reasons, but you have to ask why you feel the way you do. Is it because you felt disrespected? Is it because you felt that you did a whole bunch and you didn't receive the proper reward? What exactly caused your heart to feel this way and lead you to go do certain actions? Like if you were on that extreme side, or why did your heart feel this way, and why did you stop and start to seek out solutions? Some people seek solutions to ease the pain, right? Because not everyone does things for the same reasons, right? Some people, like, say for instance, you see a guy help somebody up that got an old person that fell down. Some person could have done it because they felt compassion, because maybe their mother fell or their dad fell or their great grandparent fell and they broke a hip, and they go over to help them, right? Their brain prioritized it for a certain reason. right? You have some people that would do it because maybe they envision themselves as an older person, right? But it all stems from compassion. On that note, right? And then you might have someone that does it for the intention of maybe this person will give me money. So now you have the same action, right? But it stems from greed, right? So that's how that's how people get betrayed and backstabbed, right? You'll have people doing the same actions, but the intention or the heart has completely different emotions, leading to the action. And so whenever you're starting to understand these concepts, you really have to internalize that, man, if you see certain actions, you have to completely get away. Or once you see certain displays of someone's emotions, someone's heart, you have to step away despite the action itself not inherently being bad. Like helping them up wasn't inherently bad in of itself, but why did the person do it? What was their heart feeling in the moment that their brain started thinking of ways uh, to solve whatever problem was present? You know what I mean? Like some people help solely to receive a reward. Some people solely help because they just wanted to make your life easier. Some people solely help for the fact that they wanted the recognition. You have to ask yourself, why is the person doing the action? And it always leads back to the way they feel, right? That's why understanding a person's feelings matter so much, and also how their brain processes those said feelings. Hopefully, this topic wasn't. I felt like I got kind of all over the place, kind of in the middle. I tried to reel it in maybe the last 3 minutes, but it's one of those topics. So I might end up touching on this one in a separate video. I'll go back and listen and uh, see if I still feel the same way. But with that being said, y'all, this was D Got Sense on the D Got Sense show. We are done with episode 2. Hopefully, you all enjoyed yourself and have a blessed day.